O ye who believe, drugs and gambling and idols and divining arrows are only an abomination and an example of Satan's handiwork. So shun each one of them, that you may prosper. The Holy Quran, chapter 5, verse 91.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, and the Holy Quran asks you, are the people you are about to see prospering? Are they happy and content with their lives? Are they at peace with themselves and their loved ones?
Today, there is not a city, town, or village in North America that does not have some kind of drug problem. The caring parent who detects or even suspects drug use enters a world of depressing and disturbing situations. Addiction, promiscuity, crime, violence, and serious emotional difficulties tend to occur together. The main factor causing these problems is drug and alcohol use. Drug and alcohol use impacts families, communities, the education and judicial systems, as well as being a multi-billion-dollar economic burden. The Holy Quran discusses this subject in the following verse.
They ask thee concerning intoxicants and gambling. Say, in both there is great sin and harm, and some advantages for men. But their sin and harm are greater than their advantage. And they ask thee what they should spend. Say, spend what you can spare. Thus does Allah make His commandments clear that you may reflect. Chapter 2, verse 220. The cost of drug and alcohol use is $31 billion. That's $1,000 wasted for every Canadian per year. A staggering figure that we have hidden within our federal, provincial, and municipal budgets. It is the cost that we have accepted without much protest as normal government business. However, God's attitude is different. He expects society, especially those in authority over us, to spend this money on the poor and disadvantaged instead of the consequences of drug and alcohol use. Imagine how much better off you and your family would be if each member had an extra $1,000 to spend each year. The history of drug and alcohol use can be traced back over 6,000 years. For example, marijuana, opium, and alcohol were used in China from that time. The hypodermic syringe, invented in 1850, delivered medication swiftly to patients in severe pain. This invention led to the abuse of opium. And by the turn of the century, opiates were commonly used for toothaches, headaches, and other pain, and this trend continues. The prohibition of alcohol in the 1930s was unsuccessful, even though people drank less. After prohibition ended, people resumed their old drinking patterns. This proved that the government could not change society's attachment to alcohol by making it illegal. A better approach was needed. The start of the drug culture began in the early 1950s, when prescription drugs were heavily promoted to alleviate pain. However, this culture changed in the 1960s, when recreational drug use started. Teenagers were told to do your own thing. This focused on promiscuity, drugs, and the rebellion against all authority. The talk was of love, but the hate was widespread. In 1971, the drinking age was lowered from 21 to 18, tripling the highway deaths among 16 to 20-year-olds. In 1995, the downward trend in drug use by students came to an abrupt halt. This change can be directly traced to the early 80s, when egocentric parents, who were heavily influenced by the drug culture of the 70s, placed their own needs above those of their children's. In 2000, crystal meth and ecstasy appeared in America and have now spread to several Canadian cities, including Toronto. Drug abuse education in our schools gives us the wrong message. It demonstrates what a drug looks like and how to take it. This drug education seems to promote drug use rather than stop it. People are paid to promote the use of clean needles, and there are places drug addicts can go to get their supplies for free. Today we have people of all cultural backgrounds, all religions, no religion, male and female, young and old, learned and educated, criminal and non-criminal, all abusing themselves with drugs and alcohol.
Several personality characteristics are common amongst drug users, and the most visible is low self-esteem. They simply don't like themselves. Common excuses used by drug users are, I want to get out of my head, and I don't like being alone because I don't like the company. This implies that they want to escape from their deep sense of worthlessness.
Surely we have created man and endowed him with the best natural powers and qualities, and have given him a large measure of free will and action to mold himself to make unlimited spiritual progress. Chapter 95, verse 5. Drug users are also selfish, and nothing matters unless it affects them. They are unable to distinguish between needs and wants. When asked to explain a given action, he or she will simply explain, I wanted to. And they are surprised that you don't accept that this is a sufficient reason. Fear and grief are two emotions that people dread. Drug users also try to escape from these feelings, but their drug use only delays the inevitable. Islam offers a better way to free ourselves from fear and grief by simple acts of charity. Drug users have no respect for authority, whether it is parents, teachers, or the police. Any law, rule, or limit they don't like can be disregarded, from disobeying traffic signs to ignoring the laws against drugs. The Holy Quran addresses us on this issue. O ye who believe, obey Allah and obey His Messenger, and those who are in authority over you. Chapter 4, verse 60. This trait of disobedience appears before the start of drug use. It is often taught by parents who forget that their children learn the most by example. Until they stop, drug users display uncaring, dishonest, and often cruel behavior. Loving such a person can cause great pain and many tears. Islam puts forward a better idea on how we should live our lives. And everyone has a goal to which he turns his whole attention. Then compete with one another in good works. Chapter 2, verse 149.
Drug users also have low moral values. Every drug user is a thief, drug dealer, con artist, or at least a skilled liar. And their wants always outweigh the needs of others. And lying becomes easier with practice. It is easy when the one you steal from and betray trusts you like your parents. The Holy Quran is very clear regarding dishonesty.
O ye who believe, fear Allah and always speak the truth, and be straightforward in dealing with people. Chapter 33, verse 71. The Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has instructed us to adopt truthfulness because truthfulness leads to virtue, and virtue leads to paradise. Avoid falsehood because falsehood leads to disobedience, and disobedience leads one to hell. Unfortunately, we continue to deceive ourselves and show alcohol, the most abused drug, as something beneficial. The media delivers this message to our children every day. Now, young people associate having a good time with alcohol. This hypocrisy is so obvious that it is astonishing how we choose to ignore it. We seem to want to have our cake and eat it too. In reality, the negative effects of alcohol last for several generations. Fetal alcohol syndrome alone costs hundreds of millions of dollars in Canada and billions worldwide. There are some Indian reserves in Canada where fetal alcohol syndrome spans 3 generations, and every child in the reservation suffers from this defect. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmed, may Allah have mercy on him, discusses this same issue during a question and answer session when a doctor asked him why Islam forbids the drinking of alcohol.
Well, I think you should have told me better than I should have told you. You belong to a society given up to drinking. And you should know the negative points of this free access to alcohol by a society which suffers from so many evils concomitant to this habit. If you study the analysis made by some police investigators into the reasons of crime, the root causes of crime, you'll be surprised to find that one single root cause which is predominantly prevalent is drinking. And it has its bad effects, sometimes so very obviously visible, sometimes it has invisible bad effects which somehow takes the peace away from the society. It leaves the society restless. In so many ways, we can study the evil effects of alcohol. For instance, first of all, the wastage of money involved is huge. Once I was surprised to discover that the money spent on drinking of alcohol, all sorts, in one day in Britain, if diverted to the then dying Sudan of hunger, would be sufficient to maintain their food requirements for 1 year. I was astounded. This habit of drowning oneself in alcohol has resulted in the new generation of drug addiction. You see, this is human psyche. You want things for certain kicks and for creating an artificial atmosphere around you which can lift you from the hard realities of life which are not so pleasing. So one means of forgetfulness, self-forgetfulness, is sometimes no longer effective. There are other means which gradually creep into your daily experiences and which make you forgetful of the world around, but also give the added illusion that you are flying high in the celestial spaces and enjoying this lifted sense of lightness and hovering around the space. This is what the drugs do generally. So the drug addiction results in daily crimes of mugging, of housebreaking. The youth which has got addicted, they must somehow fulfill the craving for these things. And the whole society becomes restless, unsafe. Once a police officer, a high police official, came here to consult me on the issue of how to at least curb crime. And what can the police do about it? My answer was nothing. They are blaming you wrongly. It is the British Parliament which is to be blamed. They must curb those tendencies by legislation which result into the growing crime. morality has to be emphasized. A sense of answerability is to be promoted.
Islam is a practical religion. It analyzes problems honestly and applies solutions based on wisdom. According to the Holy Quran, there are 4 negative consequences of drug and alcohol use: enmity, hatred, forgetting about God, and abandoning prayer.
Satan seeks only to create enmity and hatred among you by means of intoxicants and gambling, and to keep you back from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. Then, will you keep back? If we observe any family or relationship where drugs or alcohol use is common, we see a broken family filled with anger. The majority of these situations either end up in divorce or the wife enduring a life of physical and emotional abuse. Over half of all police calls to family disputes involve drugs or alcohol. So we should ask the question, where are the fun and good times that the media shows with drinking alcohol?
According to Islam, drugs and alcohol damage our soul by making us forget about God and abandoning prayer. The remembrance of God in prayer is the foundation of worship and leads to success in this life and in the hereafter. God promises us in chapter 2, verse 153 of the Holy Quran.
Therefore, remember me, and I will remember you, and be thankful to me, and do not be ungrateful to me. Misusing things which God has given us for our benefit is a sign of ungratefulness. That, in reality, is what a sin is. One of the greatest gifts God has given us is our mind. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmed, may Allah have mercy on him, has explained in his book Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge and Truth about the wonder of the mind. Our mind is what makes us aware of our existence. All decision-making is done by it. The brain is merely a storage place of memory. Our mind operates on information received from our 5 senses. Even when our 5 senses are not active, the mind continues to function, creating knowledge. Knowledge can be defined as something which is safely stored in the mind as a reliable piece of information. However, there is another source of knowledge, and this is only accessible through communication from God. In religious terms, this is called revelation. God's knowledge has no limit, but man's knowledge is very confined. Therefore, the knowledge that lies beyond human intelligence can only be acquired through revelation from God, and God gives this knowledge to whoever He pleases. The Quran states, God is the knower of the unseen, and He reveals not His secrets to anyone, except to him who He chooses, namely a messenger of His. Chapter 72, verse 27.
Drugs and alcohol have such a profound negative effect on our mind that revelation from God becomes impossible.
According to Islam, prayer is a means of achieving the purpose we were created for, to know and worship God.
The founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, on whom be peace, has explained,
Prayer is not for the benefit of God. Rather, it is for our benefit. It is the primary means of finding peace. A life without prayer is a life without purpose. The Holy Quran explains the same concept in a different way with reference to the honeybee. And thy Lord has taught the bee, saying, Make your houses in the hills, and the trees, and in the fences, which people build. Then eat of every kind of fruit, and follow the ways of your Lord that have been made easy for you. there comes forth from their bellies a drink of various colors. In this is a cure for men. Surely, in that is a sign for a people who reflect. Chapter 16, verses 69 and 70. Of all the insects which cover the world, God has picked the honeybee to demonstrate that when God communicates with any of his creation, how its status is raised above other members of the same species. What is a honeybee, after all, but a fly? Yet what a fly! It is after the message of God is sent to the honeybee at the earliest stage of its creation that it begins to produce honey, a cure for many diseases. In comparison, the fly lays its eggs in filth, and the children of the fly feed in this filth until they are able to fly away, spreading disease and misery wherever they go. This is why Islam forbids alcohol and drugs. God wants us to live a pure life, free of all intoxicants, so we can find contentment, peace of mind, and receive communication from Him.
Islam wants men to be happy, to enjoy ourselves and have fun, but not at the cost of our health and peace of mind. True peace of mind is mentioned in the Holy Quran in the following verse.
Those who believe and whose hearts find peace in the remembrance of Allah, because it is only in the remembrance of Allah that hearts can find peace. Chapter 13, verse 29.